On this week's episode of Capital City Sports, we preview both the men's and women's basketball teams. Volleyball is also in action. This is Capital City Sports. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Capital City Sports. I'm your host Jeremy Urso and we begin with volleyball. The team took on the Alabama Crimson Tide at the Volleyball Center this past Sunday. Let's send it to John Wagner, who has more at the Volleyball Center.
Here at the Carolina Volleyball Center, the South Carolina Gamecocks are 9-3, looking to go 6-6 in SEC play as they take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. At a 9-3 record here, they're feeling confident at home play, and we'll see how they can do today. Let's go to the highlight. South Carolina held a lead over the Crimson Tide during the first set until Alabama scored their 20th point at the hands of Coco Atoa-Williams. The Gamecocks tied again at 22, but lost out in the set as Crystal Rivers overpowers Atoa-Williams. In the second set, Alabama's Sierra Wilson puts it just out of reach of Megan Kirkland to reach 20, but Carolina's Kelly McNeil and Caitlin McDaniel tied it up on the next point. Alabama took the set after McNeil got a hand on the ball but missed. Officials were under fire all night. Hear from Alabama head coach Scott Swanson. South Carolina owned the next two sets, hitting 20 in the third set off an out-of-bounds serve, and the Tide's Sierra Wilson stepped over the midcourt line to give Carolina the set. Ed Allen voiced his frustrations with the officials before the Gamecocks hit 20 in the fourth set thanks to Kelly McNeil. Carolina took the set when Alabama served the point out of bounds. In the end, the Gamecocks couldn't repeat their earlier come-from-behind wins in the abbreviated fifth set as South Carolina goes down 3 sets to 2 sets. After losing 2 straight sets to Alabama, South Carolina came back and won the next 2 to take the Crimson Tide to a 5th set where they lost out 14-10. The next time you'll see the Gamecocks play here at Carolina Volleyball Center, it'll be against Auburn on the 16th. Hopefully, Coco Atoa-Williams will have an equally powerful play, where tonight she had 14 kills and 12 digs. For Capital City Sports, I'm John Wagner.
The women's basketball team is also underway, and Austin Lewis and Brett Williams preview their upcoming season.
Thanks, Jeremy. We are here to preview the South Carolina women's basketball team, the number 2 in the country women's basketball team. I'm here with Brett Williams. My name is Austin Lewis. And Brett, after last season winning the SEC championship, after being picked 7th in the SEC, there are really high expectations now.
Absolutely. This is the year for women's basketball. And if you think about it, anytime you have a young college team in any sport, coaches will circle that year when they know their underclassmen will get more experience, gel together. This is that year. Returning 10-letter winners from last year, all 5 starters, and obviously last year, first-time SEC regular season champions and number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Really no limits this year.
The expectations are through the roof this year. The team keeps talking about winning a national title. And with the players they had this year, returning the SEC Player of the Year in Tiffany Mitchell, and Tiffany Mitchell has been picked to be a first-team All-American and has been ranked by ESPN as a number 4 player this year overall. And they returned to senior leader Elisa Welch.
Yeah, all kinds of leaders for the Gamecocks right now. As you mentioned, Tiffany Mitchell and Elisa Welch, along with Elena Coates, were named to the preseason All-SEC team. And they look to continue on all the accolades that they received last year, adding into a new freshman class and hopefully getting them acclimated into the Gamecocks culture. It shouldn't be too much of a problem given a lot of the freshmen coming from near the area.
Let's get into the key players now for the Gamecocks women's basketball team. We have them listed right here, and one we haven't mentioned who is predicted to be a top 10 pick in the WNBA draft this year is Ellen Ibiam, the all-time blocks leader at the University of South Carolina.
Yeah, Ellen Ibiam, just a fantastic defensive star, and we look at all the different offensive weapons the Gamecocks have, but last year she set the record and really just shattered it with 83.
And South Carolina just pounds the ball inside with Ellen Ibiam, and of course, Elena Coates, who you mentioned is first team All-SEC and was the freshman of the year in the SEC last year, and the co-6th woman of the year in the SEC. She was ranked number 25 by ESPN as of all the players in the country. And Elisa Welch, continuing that formidable inside game, was ranked number 7 in the country by ESPN.
Yeah, Coates actually, again, being that sixth woman, so she comes off the bench, adds a huge spark for the Gamecocks. They really do have a deep team, and we saw that in the recent exhibition game against Coker. 100 points the Gamecocks scored, 50 by the starters and 50 by the bench. That really speaks to what this team's made of.
It might be the most impressive front court in the country. There's
True.
so much depth. There's so much talent. I mean, when you have someone like Coates coming off the bench and not starting, I mean, what does that say about your talent level?
Absolutely.
And of course, you can't win the NCAA tournament without good guard play. And we have Khadijah Sessions, who is now a junior, and she is the point guard. And her running mate, of course, is Miss All World or Miss All SEC All America,
Miss everything.
Tiffany Mitchell, who is the lead scorer. She's great with assists. She's great on defense. She's kind of the one who does everything for the Gamecocks.
She does, and certainly when you have head coach like Dawn Staley really getting everybody into their roles, and Tiffany Mitchell's taken over and really making this team quite special.
Khadijah Sessions is the point guard, and Dawn Staley is notoriously hard on her point guards. Khadijah Sessions, coming in out of high school, is known as seen as a scorer, but now she's turned to a distributor and kind of runs the offense each game for the Gamecocks.
Right, yeah, she got a lot of weapons to throw to, like we said. Starting in, she can put up the points as well. And you really look at just the stats across this team. Everybody contributes in one way, especially on the offensive end. We mentioned EBM on the defensive side, but really just you can. And actually, Staley said after that Coker game that they're comfortable playing number 12, number 14th woman off the bench to come in and help this team out.
They said there could potentially be 9 starters.
Yes,
That's incredibly impressive to me. The talent level is insane. I mean, just like for lack of a better word, it's insane. It's just there's depth at every position now, and that's what's most impressive about the South Carolina team. And speaking of depth at every position, we have to get into the number 2 recruiting class in the country. This recruiting class is of course highlighted by Asia Wilson, the number 1 prospect in the country, right down the road from Heathwood Hall. She was actually starting in the Coker game and led the team in scoring. She had a double-double in her first start. And you have to think that she's probably going to be SEC Freshman of the Year.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any question about that. And Aja, it was just a huge pickup for the Gamecocks to be able to look right down the road, like you said, to Heathwood, keep her in this state. I mean, anytime you can get the number 1 recruit in the country and keep her out of the hands of traditional powerhouses like a UConn, like a Notre Dame.
Like a Tennessee.
Tennessee, absolutely, just within the conference. And on that note.
Her finalists were North Carolina, Tennessee, and UConn, and us. And for South Carolina to be listed in those that caliber of school says a lot about where this program has come.
Absolutely. And again, it just starts in the quality of high school women's basketball in South Carolina is pretty impressive. I mean, when you look at just who's on the Gamecock roster, they pulled another freshman out of Dreher High School. You've got Elena Coates coming from Dutch Fork. Another one, Asia Dozier out of Spring Valley as well.
Elisa Welch from Goose Creek. And that freshman we were talking about was Kadra Duckett from Dreher High School. And she's been kind of seen as she's been overshadowed by everybody else with all the attention being posed upon Asia Wilson. She was the number 32 prospect in the country, according to ESPN, so she's no slouch either. Not
a bit. And especially when you look at some other, I mean, just all the Gamecock freshmen, you got 5 of them, and they pulled up 2 from the north as well, out of New Jersey and New York with Bianca Cuevas. And that's great to be able to go up there and pull away.
Kleine, but she's going to be sitting out this season.
Right.
But yeah, Cuevas, as we mentioned her, she is a different style of point guard than we've had at South Carolina. One who can score, one who can finish, one who has, as you saw in the Coker game, incredible 3-point range.
Yes.
And Dawn Staley said she gives South Carolina something that they haven't had off the bench in a while. Just a really fiery, really different style point guard. And of course, we are forgetting Jatari White. We can't forget her. She was ranked number 7 in the country at her position, the number 1 post player in the country. And she doesn't have to be thrown to the fire like Elena Coates was last year. She has time to develop because she is sitting behind Ibiam, Coates, Welch, 3 fantastic post players.
And the question is, will White get that playing time? I mean, it's hard to say that she doesn't deserve it, but you just look at this whole team, and that's one thing that Staley brought up at her last press conference after Coker, is just saying, we have to get through the innocence of the preseason and realize that not everybody's going to get on the court, and they've just got to figure out the right combinations, but anybody can perform well.
The only freshman who is probably going to get legitimate, true, starting playing time is Asia Wilson, because Dawn Staley said that Asia Wilson right now is head and shoulders above the other freshmen. Asia Wilson, it's not that she is remarkably talented. She's just very college ready right now.
Yes.
And of course, now that we're done with the players, we have to get into probably the toughest non-conference schedule we've had in a very long time.
Got to be one of the toughest in the country.
And a loaded SEC.
Oh yes. SEC has quite as weapons as well.
3 SEC teams in the top 5. So let's get into our key matchups of the year. We have December 7th against Duke. You're headed to that game, aren't you?
Hopefully. That would be nice. But yeah, Duke's going to be a really big put-up or shut-up game for the Gamecocks early in this season. If you think back to last year, playing North Carolina in that Carolina's Challenge over at Myrtle Beach, Gamecocks lost that one and eventually lose to the Tar Heels in really what wasn't a close game in the Sweet 16. So this is one for them to build psychologically if they can go into Cameron Indoor and get that win.
And it's a real challenge for our post players playing against one of the best post players in the country in Elizabeth Williams for Duke. It's
also named to the preseason All-America team.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge for Coates, Ibiam, and potentially White in that game to see how they defend her. And then we get into the SEC schedule. The SEC from top to bottom is an incredible conference with 3 SEC teams in the top 5. And of course, number 5 in the country is Texas A&M, and they come here on January 26th.
Yeah, A&M, one of the other teams to beat the Gamecocks last year, finished 29-5. It was an overtime game in College Station. So South Carolina lucky to have them at Colonial Life Arena this year, and CLA actually undefeated were the Gamecocks playing at home last year. So they look to build on what's really becoming a growing fan base around here in Columbia.
Over 7,000 season tickets sold at the Colonial Life Arena for women's basketball. A great crowd. We're expecting at least 7,000 to 8,000 plus every single game. Look to be top 10 in national attendance this year. And of course, when speaking of number 1 in attendance and the traditional power of the NCAA, and easily, because they're the best team on our schedule.
Yes.
The hardest game of the year is February 9th at UConn. It's going to be essentially the biggest game in women's college basketball this year.
No question.
In the regular season, of course.
Yes, sir. And of course, this could be a preview of the national championship if all works out. But really, UConn, I mean, they're dominant. No one doesn't know that. But what nobody knows is who's going to be the next team to knock off the Huskies coming off their 40-0 season. And I think a lot of teams, anytime you play the Huskies, you have this chip on your shoulder saying, why not us? But I think South Carolina should go in thinking, why us? And by that I mean, here are the reasons why we can hang with the Huskies, because we play in a tougher conference, the SEC. We have the talent, we have the experience, and we're actually getting the respect as a number 2 team in the country, so we can actually get this done.
The one thing South Carolina does not have is Breanna Stewart.
True.
The consensus best player in the country. She is a unanimous All-American, and defending her and defending Mosqueda Lewis, who is also another first-team All-American, and Mariah Jefferson, who was according to ESPN, a second-team All-American at the point guard position. So playing against Gino Auriemma, who Don Staley coached with over the summer with USA Basketball, it's going to be a quite incredible test for the Gamecocks, and you can judge how great South Carolina could be essentially after that game, because the separation between number 1 and everybody else, as seen last year in the national championship game, is a pretty stark difference. UConn has to replace Stephanie Dolson, their big center, and Bria Hartley, their one of the senior leaders at guard. It'll be interesting to see how UConn truly replaces those players, and how our players, such as an Asia Wilson against Breanna Stewart, such as a Tiffany Mitchell going up against a sophomore like Sanaya Chong, and see how Khadijah Sessions handles her business against Mariah Jefferson, see how Welch plays against Stewart. It's just, to play against the talent of UConn, it's going to be a real kind of measuring stick for women's college basketball.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we talked about South Carolina's weapons, but Connecticut's weapons have been in existence for forever. I mean, Gino Auriemma is just a coaching god, and he really has the train of recruits coming through. And so we're seeing what Don Staley can do, trying to build on momentum from previous years. This recruiting class goes a long way in that regard. We'll see what kind of program South Carolina has, and this is the way to show it on the national stage.
To beat a man, you have to beat the man.
Absolutely. Staley wants to beat Gino.
Yeah, she definitely wants to beat Gino, because Don Staley, the thing she dislikes the most is losing. And we have, transitioning from UConn, we have probably the second most historic program in women's college basketball. We have number 4 Tennessee at home. Tennessee was one of the teams that beat the Gamecocks last season at Tennessee. So it'll be really interesting to see how things have changed from one season to the next.
Yeah, Tennessee, another huge game. And again, to have them here in Columbia, to not have to travel to Knoxville this year definitely helps the Gamecocks. As we talk about number 4 and number 5 coming here, they'll try to get it back after what really, again, wasn't a close game at the regular season finale last year. Didn't quite go well for Carolina.
Tennessee does lose Mercedes Russell, last year's number 1 prospect in the country. They're redshirting her this year due to an injury. And next season, they will be loaded with kind of a enemy of the South Carolina women's basketball team, because she torched us in both games, Diamond to Shields, and having Russell back. So Tennessee next year will be very, very extremely talented. And we end the season, last game of the season, before the SEC tournament and before the NCAA tournament. We have March 1st at number 11 Kentucky. We beat Kentucky both times last season in the regular season, but they beat us in the SEC tournament. That's going to be a very tough game because that's the final game for South Carolina. And Kentucky is always a tough matchup.
Right. It's, again, another trap game, if you will. Not exactly a stereotypical trap game, but still on the road, Rupp Arena, last game of the regular season. Again, happened
essentially a week right after a Tennessee game.
Right. Yeah, it is. The schedule just stacked for the Gamecocks. And you see this trend. These bigger games that we're highlighting are the teams that South, with the exception of UConn and Duke, are the teams that South Carolina lost to last year. They definitely have a chip on their shoulder trying to get those back today.
Definitely. And I guess since we finished up the schedule, we have to talk about the expectations for this season. South Carolina's picked to win the SEC again. And Brett, do you think they'll do it?
I think so. I think the Gamecocks, again, have all the weapons. I think this is the year, and this is the time they'll have to step up. We'll know what this team is like in a couple weeks, especially after that Duke game, and they'll have already played Clemson, play the other USC, Southern Cal in the season opener. I mean, got some big games early on. I think if they can get that momentum ahead of the SEC, they'll be the team to beat.
We are just a few days away from November 15th, which is the season opener against Southern Cal, and we cannot wait for women's basketball season to get started. Let's throw it back to Jeremy, who will close it up.
Thanks, Austin, and that'll be it for this week's episode of Capital City Sports. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter at CCS on SGTV. From all of us here at Capital City Sports, I'm Jeremy Urso, signing off.